Welcome to the Gourds and Pomegranates podcast, talking common sense for church communications. Here's Hannah and Joe.
So I always like having a nosy. No, hang on. Let me say that again. I always like looking professionally and, observing what others are doing to get inspiration, especially if I'm going through a dry spell of creativity. But also, that's kind of where the nosy comes into it, of just actually sometimes it's nice to see what others are doing not in your context.
We'll call it inspiration.
Finding inspiration. But at the same time, it can be really easy that if you are in a small church, you are in a rural area, there's not a lot of team, even congregation, there's not a lot of budget, and you're looking at the big names, well-resourced, the big presence churches, and just kind of get really...
It can be disheartening, can't it?
Disheartening, despondent, and just sort of you just think, oh, well, I could never do that because of, I don't know, X, Y, Z. So why should I even bother trying to do that? And to an extent, I do understand that. I've experienced it. Yeah. But we kind of thought that it would be a good thing to do is to bring a couple of different accounts and churches that are doing some fun and creative things and that just might help with a bit of inspiration for creating either content on social media, just generally looking at your comms, or even just thinking about doing church creatively.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've done some of our favourite tools and resources and tried to give some inspiration in that sense before, but just, thought it'd be a good idea to look at some people who are doing things well, which isn't about saying these are massive, do everything they're doing, but just, highlighting the good things.
Yeah, and so you don't have to, well, actually, we would probably say don't. We'd suggest don't follow them exactly, but take a little bit of the essence and the thinking behind what they're doing and, apply it to your context. I will say don't expect the same results, because if you're in a different context, you're going to get different things, but actually just see what can we try out and what can we do something new.
Yeah.
So the first one that I have to say immediately came to mind when we started thinking about this episode was Holy Trinity Ball Lane. We had Josh as a previous guest, or as a guest on a previous episode, and I should have checked the number for which one it was. But I have to say, I regularly think about them and just how they're doing, how Josh and the church are just doing something a little bit different. Yeah. Yet it is so innovative, even though it's not really that different. I don't know. I just think they're amazing. I have to admit I was new to them, but it just the whole concept really impressed me. So Josh realised that within his community and the people that were coming to church, that were actually a little bit different from what one might say were a normal church congregation. And so he didn't focus on the normal Facebook, which is where, to be honest, we would suggest most people go and start off if you're looking for a social media and sort of online community to build around. But actually LinkedIn was the better one. And he identified and understood his audience and the demographics that he was engaging with. And he puts his content, his resources, his church, where his audience hang out.
Yeah. And that's an intentional thing of the vision of the church as well. So as a reminder, if you've not heard that episode, they're a city centre church. They're seeking to reach professionals in the working week. Rather than having a Sunday meeting, they're trying to get people whilst they're actually there in Leeds at work.
Yeah. So I just think it's not going... oh, well, we have to do it in this way because this is where we've always done it. But actually going, we can do something a little bit different and we can reach people in a different way. Yeah. And he's constantly coming up on my feed because I've liked him. I'm not even anywhere near him, but it's just really exciting to see. And he's made it appropriate for the audience rather than trying to kind of like shoehorn an audience into the style that we've kind of always done church. And again, of like, you see him sort of engaging a lot more in the local community of things like business groups and Chamber of Commerce and stuff, and he's sort of like tagging those in and engaging those, and he's reaching out to loads of people with that slightly different perspective, and it just works really well. And it's just really exciting to see the content that they put up, but just see how sort of they are bringing the gospel and witnessing in this new space.
Yeah, it's the essence of it is the contextualization, because it's not just the content. It's the fact that the content marries up with the events that they're doing and the events that he's going to and where he's looking to have a presence, and they go together really well. And yeah, I'm the same. I probably spend most of my time on social media on LinkedIn through work stuff, and that's the one that pops up, and I don't see other churches doing that.
No.
Would I suggest that every church does it? No. It has to be in line with who you are as a church. So if you don't have any professionals, if none of your people are on LinkedIn, then it's probably going to be a bit odd if you just start posting there. But if you are doing something, if you're seeking to reach into that area and work with professionals, certainly if you're a city centre church, but maybe, commuters or whatever, then that's the place to go for it.
Yeah. I mean, that wouldn't make sense for me. I live in a small rural town. It's mostly retired people that live around here. But yeah, I just think it's sort of that contextualizing and just sort of identifying how the on-site marries with the online and making sure that those messages kind of work together.
Yeah. And I'm going to shout out as well something that I work with kingdombusiness.uk and the Kingdom Business Champions, because there are loads of Christian organisations that seek to work with businesses and entrepreneurs and those Christians who work in business. So go and have a look and see what's going on there as well. But in the spirit of being self-indulgent, the next church I'm going to call out is one of my clients. So Otford Church are a church fairly close to me. They're a relatively small church. They're a village church. And we worked together around 6 years ago on a new logo and website. At least it was obviously new at the time. And the reason I want to call them out today is not to highlight my work, but it's to highlight the kind of ethos behind it. So last year they came back to me and they said how the church has changed quite a bit in that time. I mean, obviously COVID has happened since then as well. The demographics have changed a bit, and they wanted the website to reflect this and to have something that was more reflective of who they are now rather than who they were. That meant a more modern feel rather than what was quite a traditional feel at the time. So yeah, I wanted to recognize that they didn't just sit with it because it was something they'd invested in. They could have just kept it there, but they wanted to adapt it and take it forward. And obviously it was lovely that they came back to me rather than taking it to someone else. So the main thing that it meant was we did a new photo shoot. We had a more modern site, which was a bit more minimal, a lot more based around photography, which was, that was a really good shoot. I love working together with churches on organising the shoot because then we know what we're going to get out of it. And we know the style that we're going for. Lots of people being a big part of it, and showing that this church is growing and that it's a family church and highlighting that so that people can see it. It's not, you're not wondering what you're going to walk into. So yeah, just a little mention there for Otford. You can find their site otfordchurch.com. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And I think is a really important thing to remember and to encourage that if you've invested in logos and websites and, it is, it's not cheap to do it well, and it can seem like a really...
You want it to be a long-term investment, don't you?
Yeah, and it can be difficult for a lot of church teams to understand the significance of it. Yeah. And I think then as soon as it becomes slightly out of date or it just doesn't quite fit, you immediately panic and think, oh my gosh, we've got to spend that same amount, if not more, to redo it. And I think there is something to be said about sometimes you don't need to redo a whole thing, just a little refresh. Yeah. Can be...
It definitely depends how it's built in the first place. I quite often get asked, can I update a site? And if it's not been built in the right way, then sometimes it is easier to start from scratch. But especially in this case where I'd built the site, I knew how it was built and I could do it. It was a much smaller cost to them to update it. And we had the bare bones. We had all the text content could be used. Some of it slightly tweaked to be modernized as well. But yeah, on the whole, all of that stayed the same.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So I'm going to be a little bit self-indulgent as well. This is not a church. Actually, no, technically I have worked with them actually, but it is not for anything that I have worked with them about that I am raising. But I want to give a shout out to those small rural churches. So not in my town, but it's my parents' town. There is a local Anglican church, St. Mark's in Hurston. And I want to say, do go check them out. Go and show them some love because they are a lovely bunch of people. Sometimes there are things that they post and I do think, I wish you wouldn't have done it that way. Or, I wish that you'd consider using this thing. And I do know them. And the minister, he said he's not sort of the most passionate about social media and stuff. And he doesn't particularly prioritize it. But they are on my feed regularly. And they are really showing well through pictures and regular pictures and lots of nice smiley faces of people what they are doing and doing together as a church family. So it's not just sort of here's the vicar and he's stood up the front and doing this, but they're showing lots of community stuff and church family things. Obviously they do the regular sort of this is what's happening this week or this month at the church, or come along on a Sunday. But they also then shared a load of pictures of, we had a church picnic on the lawn, or we did afternoon tea for the Jubilee, or they went to go to a local pizza restaurant thing. And it was totally unrelated to anything about the church. They weren't sharing anything about the church. They were just like...
It wasn't just for the sake of promo.
Not at all. But they were just like, we went out as a church family and we went to... Coastal Crust. And I was like, that's so lovely.
Coastal Crust.
Coastal Crust, yes. I've not actually been there.
Oh, you'll be getting all the gift cards through now after mentioning on the UK's premier church podcast.
Exactly. And I think it's something that you've mentioned before about sort of thinking about having, planning meetings or the odd gathering, a small group social, go and do it in your local pub or a cafe. Actually take the church into your local community. Be out there and with the people that you walk past or you work
just be
with
present.
And and I just think there's just something so lovely about that and their sort of authenticity through the things that I would love to see them do, but their authenticity of wanting to be present and not letting that hold them back, I think is really, it's just really endearing. And I just sort of look at it and go, brilliant, I love it. Like, just be out there.
Yeah.
And then I have to say, I think they are the sort of only church where I've really seen it, especially locally. And it feels a little bit sad, kind of. But they share updates on people's passings or the funerals of people who were either at the church or the funeral was at the church, or the person had a connection to the church. And it might be a bit odd. I know some people kind of be like, that's just a bit icky to share on church, on a church Facebook page. But actually, it's such a lovely way to acknowledge and honour those who have been a part of the family. And the fact that the person who has passed had a connection to the church. I think it's just a nice way to sort of say, that they've gone, but we won't forget them. And, we wish them, we pray for them as they go into this next step. And, because for Christians, I think, so this could go down a little bit of a ramble of funerals, but sort of I think there is something that we really hesitate from talking about within church about funerals and stuff. And I just think it's a nice way of sort of slightly bridging that gap so that people feel comfortable of going, actually, can I come in and talk to you because we want to have a funeral or something like that.
Yeah. It's quite a transactional thing in terms of, this, it's not necessarily something that you're saying, come along to this thing that we're doing, but it shows your presence in a different way that as that sort of pillar of the community.
Yeah.
And that's, especially with Anglican churches, that's what they're known for.
Yeah.
And yeah, why not? We might put it in a village newsletter or something, or it might go in the local paper under obituaries. So why not show it on social media?
I mean, and they're not taking a picture from the back of the church in the middle of the service. They tend to sort of either just share a picture and say, we have had the funeral, or we're having the funeral, and to, celebrate the life of this person. So I think it's something, it's a really lovely, again, of that kind of like connecting with the community.
Yeah.
They are not a big church at all. I think they are the smallest of the Anglican churches in my area. They do not have many young people at all, but I just feel they deserve a shout out for trying.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's the trying, but it's also by trying and doing something, then they're doing a better job than people who just aren't trying, aren't doing anything. And
exactly.
They don't need to be perfect. When we put stuff out, yes, we can get frustrated if we see a poster which has got a million pieces of clip art on it, or way too many fonts, or just using Comic Sans. But at least you're actually showing up and we're seeing you on social media, and shout out for that, because it is really hard to prioritize that stuff in church life.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Stewardship, a Christian charity that helps Christians be the best stewards of the resources God gives them. For churches and charities, this means helping them grow what really matters.
Whether you're planning a new building, need fundraising support, or help with your payrolls or accounts, Stewardship is there to help you grow with wisdom and purpose. Loans, fundraising, and sound governance, they're not flashy bits of ministry, but they are the bits that help it thrive.
So if you're growing something good, grow it well. Head to stewardship.org.uk to find out more. So I'm going to mention a church which probably we don't mention that often. Having just spoken about a couple of small rural village churches, I want to shout out Elevation Church. Obviously, they're huge, and primarily not UK based either. But actually, that hugeness is kind of why I want to shout them out. So I watched some of their live stream recently, which shows, first of all, the fact that they're doing it via YouTube rather than kind of hidden away or Zoom or anything like that, or even just on their website. That's how I found it, just by being on YouTube. And I do occasionally see churches that I'm not connected with pop up in my YouTube feed. But despite their massive nature, it was really engaging. You had a couple of presenters who were speaking just before the service started directly to the camera. It was going between shots of them or some VT inserts where they'd play a video. Or as they were talking, it would have some shots of the congregation getting ready. And I mean, obviously, it was very slick. They had a whole team and I imagine quite a big budget going into this. But down to the point where with 10 seconds to go, they were speaking and praying and saying, we hope that you have a really great experience wherever you're watching this from. And then as that timer ticked down, the camera moved to the stage. We're obviously not suggesting that small churches have the ability to do that. But just to consider that if you are live streaming and you are seeing enough people join via that it's not just your one or two people, but enough people join that it is worth leaning a little bit more into that personalization. You can't have online live stream pastors dedicated. Like we're under no illusion with that, but thinking, what can you do? Maybe it's just a pre-recorded video. It could be the same one every week that you play before your service, just for the online people to say, this is who we are as a church. This is what you're going to see today. If you want to find out more, then get in touch, and then play the service. That might just be the smallest first step towards it, which once you film that video, you just play it. It doesn't require any extra work each week, but it might just bring people that bit closer. And then it's worth saying as well that they don't leave it there. So whilst they are a huge church, whilst they're in America, they do have groups around the world as well. So you have that next step for people to come into. I don't know what that looks like for your church. It might be that it's a Christianity Explored course or something like that. It might be that it's a monthly or even less frequent Zoom meeting where you can just come and say hi and say, hey, I've been watching you online. But something that's a way, a next step for people who aren't in the building to connect in more.
I heard once a church in Exeter were doing it, that they were, and this was kind of height of the pandemic, or coming out of it slightly, but they would have people not presenting just before, but they would have people just monitoring the chat.
Yeah, sure.
Because normally it's the tech guy has pressed record, it's filming, and there is no then connection between the fly on the wall camera watching and that. And so just having that ability to have someone, even if they are not a online pastor, but of just someone being able to connect with them, I think.
Yeah, we do that, and we don't stream publicly. Actually, we do it via Zoom, so it's a closed stream. But the person setting it up is able to say hi to people before the service. I think mainly just through the text chat, but it also means that if you have your regulars who aren't there, you notice, and if you have people who are struggling to join, then you may not be able to solve it in the moment, because that person is also responsible for getting the PowerPoints up and ready and the songs and all of that sort of thing. But you can be aware that they had an issue joining, and you can help them to join next week. And again, for something which, for me, live stream is always a backup. It's a secondary thing to in-person church. But for some people, it is the reality. It is their only thing. And to make it that much less isolating and more inviting is really important.
Yeah. No, there's definitely, I'd, as I said at the beginning, it's not about looking at those big churches and going, oh my gosh, I can't copy all of that, but of just going, what's a part that I could copy, or what is an element that I could replicate in my own context?
Yeah, for sure.
So the next two that I want to bring, but they kind of have the same, it's the same sort of message from them, because they are both on it's through TikTok that I really think that they are doing excellently. It's Moorlands Theological College, which is just up the road from me, and Bristol Diocese, because I think they were the first diocese that I saw on TikTok, or at least the first ones I follow. And though their sort of content is slightly different, but what it is, I think, is genius that they have acknowledged and recognised, again, their context, their audience, and they are leaning into it. So for Moorlands, their audience, they have a relatively kind of young student cohort compared to, I think, other theological colleges where it's perhaps kind of those in their 30s going and exploring sort of ordained ministry. I think Moorlands is a bit younger, or at least that's what they look from the pictures that they share. And so they've acknowledged that the sort of the younger generations of the millennials and the Gen Zs, actually those people are on TikTok. And so they are creating content for TikTok, and they're engaging with the students that are there. They're getting, theological reflections. And so for why have you started this course, or asking them a question, and then you have a kind of number of people responding, some testimonies. It's such a lovely way of sort of more than just the picture and here's Lucy and she's studying,
it's a classic case of using, it sounds really bad, like you're abusing people, but using the content that you've got your people there as a resource. They have ideas, they have stories, then use that. Yeah,
exactly. And I think and you'd probably be doing it anyway, so why not just do it in a platform that is is targeting new people. But then they also play into the trends and styles and audios that are popular on the platforms in a totally kind of where appropriate, but it's just fun because it intermixes. And actually, I'm watching that because they were doing the where they someone throws something and you think it's going to be a jump scare, and then it's just the person rolling over being like, come and see our latest courses that we've got. And it's just, I don't know, I just think it
good. Works for their audience. Yeah.
It's just leaning into it, and I look forward to their content. And then that's the same for Bristol Diocese. They clearly are using TikTok as their sort of more fun platform, and I think some people don't entirely agree with that necessarily. But they are not trying to convince people to come and come and become a vicar somewhere. They're answering questions about Christianese and the language and the processes of particular a kind of Anglican denomination. So what does a bishop do? What happens at an ordination, or, certain events in the liturgical calendar? They're probably kind of speaking to Christians, but actually they're probably really more speaking to people who aren't and who don't have a clue and sort of just go, I don't know, I'm finding it really hard to engage, but they're informing and it's presented by younger people. And so you kind of feel like, oh, I might sort of stick around and listen to this. And it's really transferable to what churches can do at a local level, talking about, the certain languages or certain things, what's Easter about, or why do we celebrate? What is Advent? What do we do in Advent and stuff? They are things that churches can do at a local level where you can engage with younger people within your congregation, or you can give it to them as an opportunity to sort of have fun and think creatively. And, I have to admit, I've been a Christian my whole life. I was working for a church, and it must have been a few years into it, and I only actually learnt what the word liturgy meant, because no one ever explains it to you. And I just think it's
But I mean, that's right for
it's really
a
informative
source of content, isn't it? That going back to the basics, and it's doubly helpful because it's helping people who aren't familiar. But actually, for those who might be overly familiar, it's quite a good refresher as well. And yeah. What are people assuming? What are we assuming people know? And that in itself is already a great content series that is personal to your church as well.
Definitely. And I mean, they are a serious account. They're not irreverent and flippant about stuff, but they do entertaining things, again, by touching on certain trends and audios and styles that work appropriately for them. And I just think, both of those accounts, it's sort of, they've probably got a bit more resources than a local church, but it's just really fun to see that they have acknowledged a difference within platforms and the type of content that you can create on them.
Yeah. And I guess it's without being novelty and like just pure entertainment. You can be lighthearted and relaxing and take a slightly more chilled out look at yourselves as a church. Is maybe one lesson there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The last ones I want to shout out are two churches that we've mentioned both of them before, but speaking about their buildings. So we spoke to Richard Coekin at the beginning of this series about Dundonald Church in Wimbledon, where he used to be the pastor and is still involved there. And then Lansdowne Church in Bournemouth, where I used to go. We've had Peter join us before to speak about that. And in both of these cases, the buildings are so welcoming. It's such a thought through part of who they are as the church. We so often interchangeably use the word church when we mean the church building, but actually sometimes we can go so far the other way that we know the church is the people, so we kind of like don't really care as much about the building.
Yeah, that's true.
The building matters because it can be something which puts people off of coming in at all, or if they do come in, of ever coming back. It's not just this thing that we can forget about. If we are welcoming people into our doors, then it's something we should care about. So, I mean, both of these have got a lot of glass. As Richard mentioned, you want people to be able to see, in their case, right through into the auditorium. That's not quite the case at Lansdowne, but you can see into the church, you can see into the cafe areas that both of them have at the front. That is very non-threatening. That you can come in. So many churches, and I'll come on to older buildings because it's obviously easier if you have the flexibility of a project, but so many churches, once the doors are open, you might only see into a very small vestibule or a small corridor or something like that. And even as a Christian going into a new place for the first time, that can be a little bit daunting because you just don't know. Yeah. So if you have the opportunity to have those sight lines and that sort of thing, brilliant. But you can see people. You can see that you're not going to be the only young person going in there. You're not going to be the only person going in there. You can see that you can go in, and the function of being able to get a cup of coffee isn't just about having a nice cup of coffee, though hopefully it is nice rather than a horrible instant. The student work we used to do, we had the cheapest Asda coffee that used to taste of sausages, but so hopefully it's not that. But the function of being able to get a coffee and stand there and take in your environment and just get your bearings is really important. So you might not have the budget for a brand new building. There are loads of churches though who have old buildings and they adapt them even in small ways. They work hard to make them work for people and make them still be really inviting. That might be the old classic of can we move our toilets inside rather than having them as an outhouse? They still exist.
Yep. I've experienced that.
Yep. And that is a really big thing, you know, and not everyone's even going to be able to change that. But it could just be smaller things like the way round that your building is. You know, if you have chairs or are able to go towards chairs rather than pews, the flexibility that means maybe you meet side on, and that might just mean that the exit where parents take kids out is slightly more hidden at the back rather than right at the front of the church.
Yeah,
it's going to be different in every context, but thinking it through, we've talked before about every aspect through the eyes of a newcomer. What does it look like? How can we be sensitive to that? And not just newcomers, you know, more comfortable for everyone. But one, I guess, kind of sub-denomination in the sense of the planting network of HDB, they tend to do this really well because they will have these old buildings that are maybe not being used, or they take over and they revitalize them, but they make them feel so warm, and there's that HDB feeling that you get in a more modern youth-oriented church. It might be things like having the lights a bit dimmer, but what it isn't is ripping everything down and starting again and saying we need to be ultra modern. It's embracing what's there, like making a feature of the stained glass windows and that sort of thing. But just thinking, how can we make this feel a really inviting place? Not because that's the main thing, but to help point towards the main thing of what's actually going on inside the building.
Yeah. Well, I think so it's not the main thing, but I think, again, we, like you said, of sort of we can be so far the other way of sort of forgetting about it. Actually, with the state of the world, with how sort of counterculture Christian life and church gatherings are, you do have to make it appealing. And so that might be making nice coffee, or, you know, having it warm, putting the heating on just a little bit earlier so that church is warm by the time people come in rather than at the end. And I do think that, sometimes people, you say we've got to do something about the building and panic and think that we've got to knock it down and multi-million-pound project. Yeah.
I guess one kind of litmus test for it is, when was the last time that you thought about the atmosphere of your building or the vibe? That sounds so sort of trendy, hipster church plant, but it's really not, because your church will have a vibe whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And why would we want that to be an accidental thing if it's actually quite a key part of people's experience? Thinking through practically what can we do to influence that for the better, even if it's just moving the needle along a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So we hope that they have been some helpful, inspirational, the various aspects, social media, website, even just thinking general strategy, but also buildings. Hope that has been helpful. I think, okay, we've probably mentioned it before in some of our tools and resources, but have a little sort of, note section, or have a little open document where if you see something that you like, make a note of it and write it down, because it doesn't have to be something big or, oh my gosh, Elevation Church have got a 11-man band and it's incredible. But actually, I really like how they engaged with you before you joined that, or maybe we could do some more stuff in our local community. Just make a note of that, and actually it can be really helpful for when the time comes to be able to bring these ideas up, that you have them, not rather than trying to kind of scratch your head and go, I had some ideas earlier in the year and now I can't remember what they were.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this slightly shorter series. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to all of our guests for joining. We really pray that it's been a blessing to you in your comms and the wider sort of strategy of the church. We pray that God will bless what you're doing as a result of it, and that you'll be able to reach more people for him through your church.
And we'd also like to say a big thank you to Stewardship, our sponsor for this series. It was very exciting when we found out that they were up for sort of working with us, because I genuinely love Stewardship. I think I gave checks up until not so long ago at my church, purely because I liked that it wasn't just a direct debit and very automated. But then I think I lost my checkbook and all got confused and stuff. Then I found out that there was this site, and actually now it's an app as well, where you can give to your church, you can give to charities, you can give to pioneers, and you can give to individuals. They are a Christian organisation. They are rooted in giving as a sort of ministry and as our responsibility as Christians that we should be doing. I really love as well their like emails and their blogs with like updates and resources and guides addressing the reality of a cost of living crisis that we're going through, and just sort of they are real about how we need to be giving in this day and age, and it's just I just love them, and I've loved them before they got we worked with them, but I really think that if you're a charity or as a church and you haven't explored using a tool like stewardship, there are sort of Virgin Giving and Just Giving and all of the other ones and stuff, but they're not a Christian organisation, they're not about Christ-centred giving. And I just think stewardship are absolutely brilliant, and they make it so easy to give, and I'm presuming they make it quite easy to receive the money as well. It's not some sort of difficult, complicated procedure of getting the money once people have donated. So I personally just had to say a little
for sure. It's been a real blessing to have them as our sponsor, and to have someone that we can wholeheartedly get behind and
absolutely
support. And also to find out more about them through the process of this. So thank you to Stewardship working together. Obviously, if you want to find out more about them, stewardship.org.uk. But thank you for listening.
Gourds and Pomegranates is brought to you by Joe Gallant and Hannah Fleming-Hill. You can find episode transcripts and contact the show via gppodcast.uk.